and start recording. And if you'd rather be anonymous on this call, your name won't be seen on the recording, but you can change your name so that we don't accidentally call on you or say your name if you would rather remain anonymous today. So hopefully everybody has something to drink, like some water or some tea. I've got lights going in the background that I'm going to turn off because I don't want that to be too distracting. But we're going to get started. Let me turn these off, and I'll go ahead and share our screen. There we go. It's an impulse purchase at the hardware store where I got LED lights, and the whole thing stretches across my whole house, so I only had to get one strip. So welcome, everybody. This is one of our favorite sessions because we get to talk about team care, which is really the most important part of what we do. So Taisha and I are going to introduce ourselves and get started today so that we can stay on schedule. We have a lot to work with you on. So if you're here for your team care for us to learn about assessments and habit change and how to shift around resources for more wellness in your nonprofit, your school, or your workplace, you're in the right place. So we're going to go over mostly the Plus Delta tool today. We will refer to the trees care forest, the team care forest, and we will refer to our habit change. But if you meant to be here, you're in the right place. So Ty, why don't you help us with our objectives for today?
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're located. I'm so excited to be here with all of you today. And as always, we want to start with our goals or our objectives for today. We always, tend to have three of them. We want to go over the tree metaphor, revisit that, and give you a nice recap of the other two sessions. We're going to use the Plus Delta, as Susan said, and look at the habit change / resolution form. And hopefully that is a tool that you can take back to your team or something you can do for yourself. And lastly, we're going to review best practices of team care and group health. As always, I would love to see all of the beautiful smiling faces. If you feel like cutting your cameras on, if not, it's not mandatory. But we do ask you to take a deep breath and engage with us in the chat or off mute at different points during today. And again, just be present. Take a deep breath and be here with us in this moment.
Great. And, just go ahead, take a deep breath now. Like that's another great way to start any meeting, right? Put on some classical music while you wait for folks to come. And then just remind people, take a deep breath. You're here now. So go ahead, take a deep breath if you haven't already. Take a few. It's literally the language of your nervous system. We've talked about that a little bit, and that way you can be more fully present. So we try to tell you different stories about our background when we do these trainings. And today I want to tell you how I got the name Coach Comfort. I come by it honestly. My dad was a coach his whole career. My brother coached baseball. They were both Coach Comforts. And then when I worked for Playworks, which focuses on recess in elementary schools, everybody had to have a coach name. So I got to be Coach Comfort, even though I never actually coached real sports like most coaches do. But what I learned from being a coach is that coaches ask great questions. And we're going to focus on that a lot today because what we find is that asking questions tends to encourage people to answer them. And if we can if we can design questions intelligently and then create the safe space for people to answer them honestly, we actually can build trust in our workplaces. They say that you learn when you're out of your comfort zone. I've heard this a lot because my last name is Comfort, right? Well, we think you learn when you get out of your comfort zone. Yes, you also get well out of your comfort zone because you have to learn new skills in order to be physically and mentally healthy. You have to learn new things. So you've got to get out of your comfort zone to learn the new physical and mental health skills that you will need to survive this moment of an unprecedented stress. So we encourage you to get vulnerable, to ask well-designed questions that will allow you to empathize with each other. And then that can build trust in a workplace. And as Patrick Lencioni writes about, trust is one of the main dysfunctions of a team, or the absence of trust is a dysfunction. But when you have it, everything else builds on top of that. Highly recommend that book if anyone's interested in team dynamics. So before Ty introduces herself, I'll just reiterate like this trust cycle is really important. Brene Brown has written many books about it. She says that basically courage and vulnerability are the same thing. They're two sides of the same coin. You have to have courage in order to be vulnerable. That vulnerability then inspires empathy on the part of the other person. And then that empathy actually builds trust. So most folks need more trust in the workplace. We would posit that this talking about wellness is one way to build it. So we hope to make that case to you today.
Susan, it's funny that you mentioned that word vulnerability. It's been late in my journey that I've learned to use that word. That was a curse word for me for such a long time, and it's something that I've learned, and it's been such a powerful tool for me. I wear so many different hats as a former educational, instructional coach, a former teacher, the CEO of a yoga studio, getting my doctorate. Like I said, I've been a part of so many different teams, and I kind of have this like Kobe Bryant mentality. Kobe's behind me, he has my back, but he has this mentality that, hey, you carry the team, you put the team on your back and you get it done, you go for the win. And I grew up the oldest of five. So a lot of times I had to carry the team, right? They were younger. I had to do a lot of these things. So as I got older and as I learned more and learned that word vulnerability, I realized that I don't have to be that Johnny on the spot. I don't have to carry the team. I can be vulnerable because what was happening was it was coming at the expense of me. I wasn't getting sleep, or I was up all times of the night, and I wasn't well. So that's something that I'm grappling with on my journey and that I'm working on. I've read the book Essentialism, and that has been extremely helpful for me, as well as learning the 5 second no. When I say yes to something, that means I'm saying no to something else. So sometimes it's okay to say no to something and no to things. And that's what I'm bringing to our team, is saying, no, Susan, I'm not going to do that. I can't do that because that's going to take away from something that's going to make sure I'm well as well too. So I'm excited about this training. I'm excited about today because you and I have been on this team journey together for quite some time now. And I think it started from a physical health aspect, right? Like, you visited in the yoga studio with the pilot program, and we dove into our mental health, and then we rounded it out with the team health part when we joined forces, right? So with this, I want to make sure I let you all know this is kind of the core of what our work right here. We best contribute to teams and the productivity of the teams when we are all at our peak physical and mental functions, right? Functioning. But we tend not to talk about a lot of this stuff at work, your physical health, your mental health, and team health, because we're either private, or it's not the time for it, or we're shy. We have boundaries, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? However, when we do have these conversations in the workplace, when we do talk about these things, it draws us closer as a team. It bonds us, it binds us together, and we are able to build a community even when new people come in, and we're able to look out for each other. So we made this the core. Susan always say, what is it? Red and blue
That's
make
right. Make purple.
make purple. I always get that mixed up, even though I hear it on Blues Clues all day. How it's colors, right? But red plus blue equals purple, and this is the basis and the foundation of the work that we're doing today. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Susan, as we've taken this work and kind of transformed it into our tree metaphor.
Right. And, the tree metaphor is meant to give you a natural comparison to things. We are natural beings, and it's fun sometimes to make comparisons because then we can go, oh, what are my roots? What are my branches? What's my trunk? And in this case, the roots are your roots of self care. That's what brings all of the nutrients up to your trunk, through your trunk to your branches. You have roots that are tap roots of just yourself, where you take care of yourself. And then you have interconnected roots out to the side that connect with your team. Taisha and I have a lot of interconnected roots because we've been working on this stuff with each other, and we've been vulnerable with each other, and we let each other in on what we're struggling with, what we're rumbling with, so that we can coach each other and help and hold each other accountable to the goals that we set, these little goals that we'll talk about later. But those are part of our roots. I am interconnected with Taisha's roots, and we support each other in the storms that come with the seasons naturally, right? And so the stronger our root systems can be, the more nutrients we get, the more we help hold each other up, and the more diversity we have, because this network of mushrooms underground talks and supports and brings other nutrients that we can't access on our own. So when we have a culture of team care, when we're building those systems with other people, we get stuff that we wouldn't normally get on our own. So the branches are really more about those winds that blow, right? Sometimes those winds that blow are stressful. Sometimes they're joyful. They tend to be about what our life is about, right? It's family, it's health, it's entertainment, it's work, it's the things that we do for art and the way that we handle money. These things bring stress and joy. But whatever the winds blow, whatever seasons and storms the world brings, you have to learn to be resilient. And we're all different shaped trees. We're all different kinds of trees. Some of us have had branches lopped off as we've grown and we've learned to adjust over time. There are lots of metaphors we can make. Today, it's really about the forest. Like, how are you going to interconnect your roots with other people on the team? How are you going to tap into what people's core values are so that they can go on this journey of wellness for their own inspiration, not because somebody told them to do it? So by these 3 tree trainings that we're doing up till today, and then the 4th one next Tuesday, we hope to give you like the neuroscience of stress, the sort of comparison to trees and this natural forest metaphor, the ability to measure and reframe your stress, which is what the last session on the stressor scorecard was about. And then today, how do we bring it to our team? How do we have these conversations? How do we design these questions so that people feel safe answering them? So that's what we'll get to today. And I'll just point out one thing, because we're not going to work with this sheet today, although you can, it's online, is the things to let go. It's fall. Leaves have already fallen off the trees here in the deciduous mid-Atlantic region. And just like Taisha said, when you say yes to something, you got to say no to something else. What are you going to let go? What are you going to let go to bring this wellness journey into your life? Maybe it's time you're going to let something go that costs time. Maybe you're going to let go a limiting attitude. Maybe you're going to let go a different activity or an old habit. So think about what you're going to let go in order to make room for the new growth and the new skills that you're going to bring into your life.
So, Susan, a quick recap for those of you that haven't been with us. Wow, was that October 27th? Wow. Okay, sorry. So, our first session, we focused a little bit on the I, right? We filled out our stress prescription. We used a stress prescription tool, I'm sorry, and we filled it out to assess our own stress. What things do I need to increase and decrease in my life? I needed to check in with me first. And we dove into that a little bit, October 27th. Seemed like so long ago. Then we went into the stressor scorecard in our second session on November 10th, right? Where we learned about some people stress more, some stress less. We all have different stressors. However, all of our bodies feel stress, right? And it does not feel good no matter who we are and what stress we're feeling. Stress does not feel good in our bodies. So our first, so in this training, we went through the neuroscience of the stress, because we have to teach you about the cortisols, the impact about cortisols and the impact on your health before we can convince you to change it, right? And then we talked about like reframing your stress, and we also assigned some digging deeper assignments, right? Or some growth work for you last time. I see some familiar faces on the screen. So hopefully you got your shovel out and was digging a little bit here, because we have to acknowledge it and we have to, get to those roots. So the first assignment that we gave you was about not comparing your stress to anyone else's stress. Different people respond differently to stress and situations, and getting you out exercising, noticing your stress, noticing what calms you, whether that's exercises, tea, taking walks, different things like that. So hopefully some of you did some of this work, and if you did, please feel free to drop that in the chat. We also gave you an assignment on like dig more of the team care, with digging deeper with your team. And where this is where, when you filled out the stressor scorecard, we wanted you to take it because we moved a little fast. It was only 45 minutes to an hour. So we wanted you to take that stressor scorecard worksheet that we did, look at your score, really go through it, dig through it, reflect, analyze, and again, do a self check and then do a check on with my team. Hey, what's working with my team? What's not working with my team in regards to how my team is affected by stress? Are we acknowledging that, people are experiencing stress differently? Are we allocating resources where they need to be allocated to make sure our team is well? So this was, two assignments that we just wanted you to kind of reflect on. Don't worry, we're not collecting anything or grading, but we want you, if you have not done so, try to take that time to just sit back and reflect and dig deeper. It's going to help us on our journey. And like Susan said, it's going to allow us to see what things we need to add, what things we need to let go as we're moving very swiftly into our January or start of a new quarter, right? Or a new year. So thank you for allowing me to do that recap. I'm going to pass it over to Susan, where she's going to do another kind of recap.
Right. Well, I put in the chat box, just prompting if anyone wants to share. They're digging deeper, either they're noticing of themselves, their personal stress prescription, or maybe some of you took the stressor scorecard to your team. Maybe you asked people to fill it out. Maybe you had some of these conversations. And it can be challenging to have these conversations because, as Ty noticed, people have different boundaries about what they'll talk about at work. But it can also be extremely validating and extremely empathetic to have these conversations. So we do encourage you, if you haven't tried it yet, to take it slow. And when you approach wellness from an authentic place, as someone who, we're all struggling with our wellness, our physical and mental health in some way. And so if you can, as a representative on your team or as a leader on your team, if you can bring it to the team with a posture of, hey, this is something we're all on the path for in different ways. I'm struggling in this way. Let's talk about it. That even if you don't feel like you have all the right words to facilitate a conversation that deals with identity, you can still come from an open and authentic place, and that will carry the conversation and the trust even further, even though you might not feel like a qualified facilitator, but it doesn't really matter. So this is the recap from before that sets us up for our purpose today, which, and you saw this if you were here for the first training, but we added some headlines. And this is just a sampler, just a quick sampler of some of the things we've been dealing with in 2020. We've been dealing with not only the pandemic, but incredible racial unrest and protests that bleeds over into the pandemic. We have had an extraordinarily stressful election season on top of that. And then with being a parent or working from home or schooling from home, or being a teacher who is also a parent homeschooling and working from home, for example, there are so many ways that we are stressing ourselves out, and we're stressing each other out today. With no commute, Americans simply worked more during coronavirus. These boundaries between work and home are not getting better, they're actually getting worse. And so we have to develop new skills. We have to develop new conversations. This is not something that we can continue to keep up. We have to stop and engineer these moments of wellness and of mindfulness for ourselves. Yes, you can do it for each other. That's the whole thing about team care, but really, like, no one's going to make you stop and notice the present moment and get out of your spiral but you. So what are those moments going to be? How are we going to engineer them? That's what we want to talk a little more about today. So as you ponder, like, what are you letting go? What are your roots on your personal stress prescription? What are the roots that interconnect with other people? It doesn't have to be your team at work. It could be your family team or your neighborhood team or your running team or your college roommate team, whatever. It doesn't have to be your work team, but you have to have those interconnected roots with somebody so that you're not just a tree standing on your own in a little tree box on the sidewalk. So we talked about designing good questions. And while we look at that, in fact, everybody just stand up if you are able or willing, so that we can stretch while we talk about appreciative inquiry and multitasking, because we want to make sure we get a stretch break in here. And we have to change the culture around meetings. Why do we all sit all the time in meetings? Like, get up, move around. This is not like a sitting still kind of thing. So we talked about designing good questions. One of the most constructive ways that you can design questions with your team is around appreciative inquiry. And we and constructive change. So the appreciative inquiry is the plus, the constructive change is the delta. And so the plus is what's going well, what is already good. And this is something that you can focus on the positive. Our brains have a negativity bias, that neuroscience. We remember things that are negative. We remember things that help keep us alive. But the positive things are not often the priority for our brain. So we have to notice and be grateful for and appreciate the positive. It's a training aspect for ourselves. So, what's going well? We can say that around wellness. What are you doing for your physical health? We're all doing something. We ate something today, right? We slept at some point in the last week. We're all doing something for our bodies. So, what is that thing that's going well? That's the thing we can continue and we want to support. And then, what's the thing we could do a little bit more? So, somebody came up with 4 Ds for appreciative inquiry: discovery, dream, design, destiny. When we start with that positive, we can build on it. We can say, well, I'm already walking around the block once a day. Maybe I could walk around the block twice a day, or maybe I could jog around the block and just up it a little bit. So, building on what's going well to design a different future. And that's what we want you to do with the plus delta right now for yourself. So, the first activity is going to be for yourself. And if you've downloaded the sheet, printed it out, great. If not, you can just jot it down on a scrap piece of paper. You're going to have a plus column and a delta column. And then we're asking you 3 different questions. What's your plus and delta for net physical health, the way you move your body, feed your body, and rest your body? And what's your plus and delta for mental health, the things that give you your emotional stability, whether that's physical or not, because they're connected, obviously. And a little bit harder is, what is your contribution to team health? So, what is a positive thing that you're doing for your team? Might be wellness or it might be something else. And what's something that you could change about what you're doing for your team? So we're not going to, everybody's not going to share on this, but we will ask some of you to share in the chat box. So go ahead and take about 30 seconds and fill this out. We won't yap at you, or maybe Ty will add some instruction, but I'll give you a second to fill this out. And if you have questions, pipe up. Timer. All right, so that's 30 seconds, which isn't really a ton of time, but hopefully you came up with something. So go ahead and put in the chat box. You don't have to say whether it's a plus or a delta. So you can say what your thing might be for physical health or mental health or team health. It's either a plus or a delta. And you don't have to say which one it is. We just want to get some ideas of what are your self assessments. So go ahead and put it in the chat box. You can't depend on the whole group today because some people have to put it in the chat box. So Taisha, what was one of your pluses or deltas?
I was just about to type that in the chat box to get the chat going. But if I'm being completely vulnerable with you, I hate saying this because I am a wellness instructor and a physical wellness instructor, but I have not been focusing on my own personal physical health, as far as like getting out more and exercising more. I'm used to exercising 5 times, a week and different things. And that's something that helps relieve my stress. And I haven't been. So that's definitely a delta for me right now.
Well, let me know how I can support you with that. because that's something I work on too. As you know, I had to bring something over my daughter today. I was like, oh, I know, I'll ride the bike over because she needed the bike, and then I'll run back, and that will be my exercise, like rather than trying to fit it in somewhere else. Um,
Yeah. We have some good things coming in the chat right now. The walking, the exercising. It's a couple people are with us there. So
Setting boundaries.
huge. That's huge. I can put that in my plus and delta, I think, in all the categories.
Yep. And then, exercising in the morning, that's a really great point because time of day, definitely impacts our productivity, our mental health, our mood. Exercise. Next week, we're going to focus a lot on movement and mindfulness because those are the two magic potions for our mental and physical health. And it's something everybody can probably do a little bit more of or a little bit differently. So next week, we'll focus a lot on the brain benefits of exercise as well as meditation and mindfulness. It sounds like some folks are already working on meditation, disconnecting from work, setting boundaries, using the yoga mat, walking with the dog. That's the best. So great. Glad that you're getting the hang of the plus and delta. We didn't ask you which was your plus and which was your delta. Sometimes the team health thing is a little challenging. So I'm not sure if any of those examples were for team health, but if you can take yourself off mute or ask a question in the chat box about the team health piece and how you're contributing to your team's health, again, for yourself individually, that's going to help when we do this at the next stage, this next plus delta. So anyone have an example for team health and how they contribute to that?
So I work on a 3-person team, of which I am not the top. So one thing that I do, I'm going to call it a plus, is I regularly check in with my bosses because I think we're all really good at checking in with the people below us. And then sometimes the people at the top get left feeling a little frazzled and disconnected. So that's one positive that I do for my team's health.
I love it. That's a great example. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. That is, one of my mentors told me leadership is a very lonely place sometimes. And so kudos for you for recognizing that.
And it's also modeling that anyone can ask anyone how they're doing, right? This is not a hierarchy thing that you can only ask if you're a manager, right? Anyone can ask, hey, how you doing? How you doing really? I'm here to listen.
I like this one too, being a reliable teammate. I think Sunny and I were talking about this last night as well too. Just knowing that you had that reliable teammate, it very much helps team health.
Absolutely. And Roxana was saying she, can be counted on to fill in, someone's shift if they're stuck, and she likes being that reliable team member. And that is great for team health, for, knowing you can count on people. We'll talk about the Google Project Aristotle a little later, and psychological safety is one of the most important things about a team. And so if you can build that psychological safety, that trust, then that will make for a more effective team. But this is all about team health. So I do want to take it to the team level. And oh, I forgot to show you the plus and the delta columns. There you go. And you already shared some of the things on your personal plus and delta list. Now the conversation gets a little bit tougher because we want to give you a few seconds to think about your team. So what does your team do, or your organization or your workplace do, that's positive for physical health? What does your team do, or your organization, your workplace, your leadership do that could be changed for physical health? So this is a different look, same questions, different entity. And this is really about structure and policy and practice and culture. So it's not just what you do, it's really what your team does or what your team supports. So I'll take any questions about that question. I'll also give you 30 seconds to think about it. And then we're going to break into two groups so that we can talk with some folks with Ty, some with me. Are there any questions about the question? All right, well, I'm going to give 30 more seconds. So fill out your plus delta to team physical health. Organization offers benefits that include fitness membership. That's a great example. Yeah, in the chat box, someone put a team physical health example, which is great. All right. So we're going to break you up into two rooms, and one has Ty and one has me. And you're going to share one thing that you came up with for your team and talk about it with your group. So go ahead and accept your invitation. Except Ty, you and I are not supposed to be in the same breakout room, so I'm going to go to the other one.
Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. So this is one question that, I really like digging into with groups, because it helps us to really reflect on what's actually out there and what's not. And sometimes we don't always know. So I would love to hear from, any of you on what's going
Hey,
well.
Ty, I'm sorry. I can't move myself, but I can move you. So I'm going to move you to room one and move myself, stay or keep myself here. Sorry. Bye. All right, everybody. Sorry about that. We want to have you enter some of the things that you put on your plus delta. So using the chat, go ahead and fill in some of the things, or take yourself off mute and say it. It's quicker than typing.
So this is a definite delta that my team does terrible about, I think. We constantly schedule meetings over lunch. So I often have a block of meetings from like 10:30 to 2, which not only is agonizing, but then I'm starving and crabby at the end. And I think that's really a little thing that we could tweak to help everyone have smoother days.
I love that example. There are lots of solutions. If anyone in the group wants to name a solution that they've tried at their workplace, or if you want to name one of your own plus deltas, I'm happy to jump in, but I know some other folks in the group have answers for you too.
I personally, hi, I'm Seleni. I turn off my camera because it gets really slow when I have the video on. I need to upgrade my internet, but I started blocking out my lunch on my calendar. So if anybody tries to schedule it, there's a conflict, and it's just prioritizing my breaks. So yeah, I do that ahead of time. I'm not sure if that works for every now and then. I will have, like right now, typically I block it out from 12 to 1, but then I'm doing this right now. So I made sure to have a snack before I joined, which was, I was a little late, but yeah, just prioritizing and putting it on my calendar ahead of time so that it's visible to my other team members.
I love that. Thank you.
You could also, I mean, I don't know the size of your organization, but some organizations have a no meeting policy over lunch, or like block out time during the day for self-care.
Yeah, we have several other teams that do that. I don't know why my team has not.
You can be the change
But I
maker.
love that. Maybe those calendar blocks are a really good way to go.
It's sort of passive, it's a good way to do it without confronting anyone. Olivia or Sunny, anything you want to add?
This would be a positive. So my organization sends out emails, or they did send out emails initially when the pandemic started, to give you tips on how to really take care of yourself. One was, I think the top three was get outside more, stop watching the news on the TV so much, and pick up on your hobbies that you really couldn't have done prior to, to having this extra time.
I love those. And pick up on your hobbies. Yeah, and maybe start some new hobbies, right? You've got time, you've got a little interest. Anything else to add? I gave the other group about 30 more seconds.
Yeah. Well, I like how my team, well, the orgs that I've been working on for work, we actually did a mental Monday yesterday, and they brought in like a mental health trainer, I believe. And so we did some like meditation exercises, and like I just really like how they thought about us and the rest of the orgs, and they hired someone to just like give us some helpful tips on how to relieve stress, and what to do in situations when you feel really stressful. So so I'm happy that we have members in our team that, you know, look out for our mental health.
I love what you said too about like it made you feel cared for. Like you knew that someone was trying. And even if you're like
Yeah.
a master meditator and you've already done all this stuff, you're like, yay, they're bringing meditation to work. This is great. So it's like you, if, you know, again, in that spirit of authenticity and we're all on this path together, like if you, any of you become like the wellness leader in your workplace, people will be like, yay, like Olivia doesn't know that I don't like yoga, but it's really nice that she's trying, you know, I mean, whatever the thing is, right? And so you'll get points just for trying, right? And hopefully the
Yeah.
conversations will happen. I'm going to go ahead and invite folks to close the rooms, and I think it'll come back to this main room. So I think we'll stay together maybe, or we'll see each other in the main room.
Mhm.
I think I have to leave. Yeah. All right. Leave break. Great. I think we're coming back. So we want to get some cross fertilization from both groups and hear what we talked about in each group. Again, as a model facilitation, you know, this is a way that you can have more voices heard, to break up groups into smaller groups and then collect all of the wisdom. So I think most of us are back. And Taisha, I don't know if anyone was able to chat or copy in the chat box, or someone wants to recap what your group shared, and then our group will go. Is Taisha back? Maybe not. Oh, there she is. Or anybody from Taisha's group can talk.
That's the one thing I don't like in the breakout room. It just swishes you away. You're like, ah, okay.
Do you want to report back from your group, Taisha?
Oh, we had an amazing conversation, and you know, we ended with just my group telling me that it starts at the top. They have an amazing CEO and leadership that set the tone for them, and they're like a sisterhood. They're a close knit group. They have amazing things happening, benefit packages. They can, you know, visit doctors and different things like that when need be. Check-ins with the team. They do go into the office to regroup and luncheons and things like that. The culture that they have set at their organization, and please forgive me, she said it a couple times and I didn't write the name down, but I know they're in Fresno. But their organization is doing phenomenal work, and I told her I just want to bottle it up and see if we could sell it out to other organizations. Fresno Building Healthy Communities. Thank you.
Well, that's the, you know, the beautiful thing about this. I'd love to hear if you took this back to your teams, if everyone on this call, you know, took the Plus Delta back to their teams and said, let's fill this out, let's do this, let's talk, because you'll appreciate all the great things that you are doing. And you'll say, yeah, Fresno Building Health and Communities rocks. We're the, you know, best place to work in Fresno or whatever. And you'll get proud about that, and you'll want to continue that, but also you'll recognize some things that you could do even better, right? There's no perfect workplace where we can't improve. And if you're in a workplace that is just super stressed out and in need of a pause and a reset, well, guess what? It's December. Happy December, everybody. This is the time to pause and reset. We're in the third wave, first wave, who knows what wave of a pandemic. We're in the middle of a transition politically. We have the season of hibernation and winter upon us, which is a time to really retreat and regroup and build our resources so that we can come out stronger, like Kobe Bryant says. And we have to do that with a team. Y'all, you've probably heard me say, like, we're bad at self-care. This is a community that is uniquely terrible at self-care. Taisha and I have taken on teachers and nonprofit workers because that's our background, but we know how stressed out and bad at self-care we are. And that's why we constantly talk about team care and building, like, what are those systems? What are those policies? What are the practices? What are the things that we can try together to build that trust and to build our own wellness, because we can't keep doing it the way we've always done. We have to do things new. There's just no other option. Now, I think, you know, we wanted to build out that discussion around the Plus Delta and bringing it back to your teams. There's a couple of, like, we want to tie in the habit change and give you a preview for next week. Next Tuesday's coming up fast. So if you have questions about the plus delta and the big groups, oh, I didn't say what we said in our, I reach-outed it into the chat box, and that is that our group talked about like scheduling tons of meetings in a row, including over lunch. What do we do about that? Talked about great advice from Sunny's workplace to get outside, to start new habits, and to stop watching so much news. Those are just three all around good tips. And we talked about what else? Anyone else from our group want to? Oh, and then the meditation, the Mental Monday that one group sponsored, where they brought in folks to talk about meditation and mindfulness, and that made this employee feel really cared for and really like, hey, we're trying. So that's what we want you all to catalyze in your workplace, is like, what habits can you change? What new cultural activities can you try? So next week, when we talk about mindfulness and movement, brain science and practices, we're going to go into, come ready to practice, because we're going to be doing some physical movements. We're going to be doing some mindfulness exercises. It's not just sitting and breathing. We'll do some different options, but it's all around the context of this habit change cycle. Taisha, I feel like you're better explaining habit change than I am, because you're like a fitness professional. But basically, like, we're all on this cycle somewhere at all times. Like right now, maybe you're in the contemplation green stage because you're not sure what change you're going to make, but you're going to make some sort of change. But like, how you could start a discussion in your workplace just around this cycle. You could put it in front of people and say, let's talk about one habit that you've changed in your life, and you will get some great stories, incredible stories. You could say, what habit do you want to change? Where are you on the cycle? People say, oh, I'm at 3. I'm ready. I just haven't started. I have the running shoes. I have the yoga mat. I have the subscription, but I haven't started. How can we support you on this? How can we help Ty get back to 5 workouts a week? How can we get Susan back on the yoga mat? And how formal is it? Is this going to be a policy? Can we put some money behind this? Is this like going to go on your performance review? This wellness goal, is this something we're going to talk about at every staff meeting? Like, how formal is it? Those are some questions around resources and time, because all we have is time and money. Are we putting time towards this? Are we putting money towards this? And different workplaces are going to have different answers for those questions. So Ty, before, like, as a preview for next week, should we make them like do a resolution?
I would like to keep it for next week, but the habit change, is not even just about the physical exercise. It's kind of based on that, but I use habit change with anything that I'm trying to change. It's a powerful, powerful tool. And I think the biggest benefit of the habit change resolution is that acknowledgement that it's okay to go backwards and forwards and relapse and be in different phases. And sometimes we need to hear that it's a circle for a reason, that I might go around this circle a couple times, or I might go back and forth. And that's the biggest thing. So if anything, I want to leave with all of you, take those plus deltas, those things that you're reflecting on, those things that you're thinking about, and say, hey, what's one of those things on the I plus delta and on the team that we want to commit, that we want to pledge, that we want to resolve to do, and not wait till January 1 to do it. Starting December 1st, today, this month, we are going to do this as a team. I am going to do this for me personally, professionally. And again, just a little taste of it, but I do want you to just say those words to yourself. I will commit to doing this starting today for the next 30 days.
Awesome. And just to open it up for discussion, you're here in the third tree training. And by the way, your team can look at the habit change. They can look at the plus delta. You can also fill out your forest. Like, I've done this with a group and they loved it, drawing the different elements of their ecosystem, like their partners and their coalition were like bushes and birds. And then they had like their funders who were like rain clouds raining down on the forest. I mean, you can really get creative with it. But next week, we are going to talk about those 2 magic potions, right? Movement which literally changes our brain and produces endorphins, which improves our mood. And then mindfulness, which also changes our brain and helps with stress and the immune system. So these are like, not one size fits all, but they're definitely like two incredible solutions that we want to give you more and more resources for. And then we've developed our skill shops trainings a lot by bringing in outside trainers. So if anyone's interested in those kinds of trainings, we would love to keep in touch with you. And some of the, I mentioned the Project Aristotle earlier. And if you're interested, I definitely encourage you to look this up. Google studied what makes effective teams. And we talked about trust, right? And empathy and vulnerability. Look at number one, psychological safety. Can we take risks on this team without feeling insecure or embarrassed? That's a huge element of teamwork. And when we make ourselves vulnerable about wellness and physical and mental health, that's an element of taking risks on a team. And so we're practicing taking risks, we're practicing empathy and building trust. Anyway, there's other stuff that we could talk about. We love talking about teams and team structure and the four tendencies and all of that, but I'm going to stop sharing now so that we can just open it up and we'll see what questions you have, either about the content that we covered today or questions about next week, so that we can finish up our tree trainings strong. So it's 3:48 if you need to jump off. If you have back-to-back meetings today, please do. No points off. We appreciate you being here and staying. If you have questions, we'll stay on. Taisha has to jump off in about 6 minutes, but I'm going to stay on for questions. So anyone want to take themselves off mute or type something in the chat box? And thank you, Taisha.
Well, I do, of course, have another lunch meeting scheduled after this. Thank you, Ty and Susan, so much. I always love being on trainings with you guys. They are so valuable and just a pleasant break in the day.
Oh, I'm so happy that
enjoy the rest of your conversations, guys.
Thank you, Stephanie. Well, go please take a quick break or a couple breaths of fresh air before your next meeting.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Stephanie. So any other questions? I'll finish my tea. In fact, I'll stop recording because then if anyone wants to ask a question, but they don't want to be